Greetings again, everyone, and welcome to another episode of OSI Today, the podcast featuring news and views from around the Office of Special Investigations. I'm Wayne Amon from OSI Public Affairs, and in this edition, we continue our special series, My OSI Journey, which showcases the diversity and inclusion of our command-wide members. Today, I'm very pleased to be joined by the Deputy Director of Behavioral Sciences, Mr. Terry Krebs. Sir, welcome aboard. So great to have you with us on your first podcast with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited to talk with you today.
Now, before we do kind of a deep dive into your OSI career specifics and whatnot, off mic, of course, we talked extensively about your road to OSI was paved with a very unique lineage. Now, could you please bring the listeners briefly up to date on that very unique story of yours, because it does bear talking about.
Sure. Well, about a year ago, I started to become interested in, the history of my family, which I really didn't know anything about, except that I had some Native American culture on one side of my family, and I wanted to explore that a little bit more.
Right.
So I sent off my DNA tube to a couple different companies, and when I got the results back, I was kind of surprised to find out that I was 65% English.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So that was very surprising to me. So that caused me to dig a little bit deeper. And what I was able to find out over the course of a year is that on one side of my family, my father's side, both lines from both his mother and her parents go all the way back to the earliest settlers of the country.
Wow, that's interesting. Yeah.
And what I found out more specifically is that I have a relative who actually came over on the second boat, the Fortune, in 1621, and was one of the actually earliest settlers in Plymouth, Massachusetts. And then I had several more relatives after that during the Great Migration come from England because they were Quakers and they were looking for religious freedom.
Right. Now, you mentioned the second boat, the Fortune. That followed the first boat, the Mayflower. Is that correct?
That's correct. And eventually my 10th great-grandfather passed away, and Martha Ford actually ended up marrying a guy named Brown that was actually on the Mayflower and continued to grow the family.
Huh. Wow, that's amazing. So what else can you tell us about this?
Well, what also was interesting was that all of this information I was able to document with, no kidding, actual records that were kept from that time up until now through birth records and death records and census records.
Right,
and
right.
Along the way, I found out that I have many relatives from both of those lines who ended up fighting in the Revolutionary War.
Wow.
So
very, very interesting. And so as time passed, I guess you discovered some even more interesting facts about your lineage.
Yes, it was. It's just very interesting to me because my family had no idea that we had this direct line that goes all the way back, very well documented, to the earliest settlers of the country, and then to continue on, and those who fought to make the country a country when we fought the Revolutionary War. So it was very interesting and surprising for me to find out.
Wow. Now, in our discussions, again, before we did this podcast today, Mr. Krebs, you had also mentioned that as time went on, your earliest members of your family line moved westward in the United States. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. So I was curious, because I was born in Northern California and I grew up in the Valley of Oregon. And then I tried to figure out, well, how did my family move from the state of New York, the state of Massachusetts, and Vermont, and New Hampshire? How did they get from there to here? And what helped them along was the Louisiana Purchase. Several of my family members had an opportunity to get land grants, which I have actual copies of the signed land grants that they were given. Wow. to move west. So they moved from that area to Michigan, and from Michigan to the Dakotas, and from the Dakotas across to Oregon into the Valley of Oregon. So my grandmother was actually born in North Dakota along the route of getting to Oregon.
Wow. Now, again, you mentioned, before we hit the record button here today, that some of those in your lineage, they not only served in the Revolutionary War, but they also served in the U.S. military as time went on and as the centuries rolled along.
Yeah, I have a long history of my family, serving in various forms of military service, including all the way from, the Revolutionary War, fighting for Wisconsin in the Civil War, and then continued on through the World Wars. And one of my great uncles was one of the earliest paratroopers, like the Band of Brothers, but he fought in the Pacific. Uh-huh. So growing up as a child, and really that's as far back as I knew anything about my family, was like that group.
Right.
So
right.
Any farther back, I have a picture of one of my relatives that fought in the Civil War for Wisconsin, and his name was George Washington Gaylord.
Wow.
And he had a 100th birthday party, and I have a photograph of him from his 100th birthday party. And that was it. That's as far as I knew.
Wow, that's amazing. That's quite a story. Now, how did all this come to fruition for you as far as matriculating, into you becoming a member of the military as well?
Well, both of my brothers had served in the military, one of them in the Navy in Vietnam, and then one of my brothers in the Air Force. And he was a senior NCO when I was getting ready to graduate from high school. Right. So, of course, I wanted to join the military. And because I had had an opportunity to be around that brother and to learn a lot about the Air Force, I knew that the Air Force is where I wanted to be. So in 1984, I signed up for delayed enlistment for the U.S. Air Force. Right. Oddly enough, in a unit where Miss Linda Card was the senior NCO running the recruiting station.
And Linda Card, of course, for those who may not know, is the Chief of Public Affairs for OSI Today.
Yes, one of her recruiters is the person who recruited me.
Good way to get a little plug for public affairs. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
So then, how did that matriculate then for you as far as when and how did you become interested, in law enforcement and subsequently in OSI to bring folks a little more as far as today is concerned?
Well, I was always curious about law enforcement. I grew up in an area where, I knew some people, some family friends that had worked in law enforcement. So when I came into the Air Force, I was a weapons loader. I loaded bombs on F-4s, F-5s, and A-10s. Uh-huh. One day back when we used to get regular mail, I got a note that said, hey, there are too many weapons loaders. You can get out or retrain. So one of the retraining opportunities was special investigations. So I went over to the special investigations office and talked to them, and I was close to PCSing. So I ended up going to my next assignment. Uh-huh. And when I got there, I got the same letter, and I ran into an agent who's still in the command today named John Purcell, and John Purcell recruited me into OSI in 1990.
Okay.
But right at the end of that process, Desert Storm started.
Right.
So my unit was supporting Desert Storm, and I couldn't retrain at that time. So as soon as all the Desert Storm stuff was all done, I retrained into Air Force OSI in September 1991.
I see. Now, when your OSI career began back in 91, by the way, that was the year that I retired from active duty to kind of bring people to, full circle here. Were there any specific challenges that you faced once you joined the command? And if so, how did you overcome them?
Well, OSI, it was tough to get into back then. Everything was paper based. There was no email to do things quickly. Uh-huh. And it just was a, manning and timing situation for me. Right. So, when I applied, I went into the OSI office, and the first thing John Purcell asked me to do was a writing sample. And he came back to me and said, your writing is terrible. If you're serious about being an OSI agent, you need to take some college classes, and then you need to come back, and then we'll take a look at you again. Right. So I had to make a decision, what do I want to do? And those were actually the first college classes I ever took in the Air Force was English 101 and English 102. So that I could become a better writer for OSI. And I went back, redid the writing test, and John Purcell said, now we'll consider you.
Well, that brings home a good point, sir, that being an OSI agent, you have to be able to be a communicator too, I would imagine.
Well, yeah, you have to be in OSI. You have to be a good communicator. One or two ways. You got to be an excellent writer or an excellent verbal communicator. It's great if you're both, but if you're really good at one or the others, you can be successful, and then just work on the other one as you go along. Right, so, and that's what I did. Like as a kid, like I stuttered a lot and I worked on getting over that. And that helped me focus on what I needed to do to communicate better, to do my job better. Because really what we do is really about talking to people and listening to people.
Right, right. And I know that plays a big part in, your current job as Deputy Director of Behavioral Sciences. Now, one other thing I wanted to touch on before we move on is that you've had a very eclectic military background. Correct me if I'm wrong, but you began as an enlisted troop, then became an officer, and now you're a GS civilian. So you've seen OSI from a whole bunch of different angles.
Yeah, I came in as an E4 buck sergeant, which doesn't exist anymore.
Right.
I ended up being promoted to E5 staff sergeant. And then along the way, I was given an opportunity to apply and be selected for a commissioning program, which I did. And then I came right back into OSI as a second lieutenant. I did 12 more years as an officer, retired, and then came back as a civilian. And so this year is my 30th year of OSI services in all three areas. And I've done everything from, the rookie crim agent to, running programs to being an ops officer. The highlight of my career was probably being a commander in Baghdad in 2007 during the surge.
Sure.
And then along the way, at the end of my career, I ended up getting a master's degree in counseling, and I became a licensed professional counselor when I retired from the Air Force. And that's kind of how my path led me to being able to support OSI in behavioral sciences.
I see. Wow, that's one of the most eclectic recaps I think I've heard in quite some time. Now, given that the eclectic nature of your experiences, sir, and the various jobs you've had, what or who inspires you to do your best within OSI? Is there something you could kind of pinpoint in that area?
Well, when I think about that, there's a couple things. Growing up, like I had, two really great teachers that I still keep in touch with these days, Mr. Utzler and Mr. Mitchell-Tree. Both of those guys, which I really didn't know at the time growing up, were former Army folks from Vietnam.
Oh, okay.
And they kind of set me on this path of like, hey, if you want to do something with yourself, like you have to find it and kind of come to grips with it about, where you kind of fit in. Right. And then along the way in OSI, I had wonderful supervisors. My first very important supervisor to me was John Macris, who's still around. And he's the one who kind of set me on the path of like doing the right thing and trying to do the right thing. When you make a mistake, just resolve it and move on. Right. But really in OSI, you have an opportunity every day to impact lives on a significant level. Even in the smallest things that we do, we impact people's lives in a positive way. So really that opportunity to help someone or to help solve a problem or to help people have a better day, that's really, what drives me.
I see. Now, this kind of dovetails on that question. With what you just said, would that be the most gratifying part of your job with OSI, whether it be in the past or currently?
Well, it's the people. Right. Yeah. Like in OSI, like just like you, like we talked about your past experiences and everybody's got all these great different backgrounds. It's not like working in a shop where everybody's, only done one job for the last 30 years. I can't tell you how many people that I've worked with and worked around that have come from so many differing backgrounds. Right. And what that does and what it has done for me, like OSI has given me everything in my life, like great places to live, great places to raise my children, wonderful opportunities to go to school, right? And wonderful opportunities to lead and to follow and to be impactful every single day. OSI has done all that for me. Like I feel like I'm the luckiest person in the world to have had all these opportunities. And OSI is just a great place to not only grow as a professional, but to have a safety net for your family. Like when I deployed, people took care of my family. Right. When I struggled, my friends came to my side. Like it's a wonderful, wonderful organization. And I can't say enough good things about it.
Well, from leadership on down, everyone professes how much of a family environment OSI is, and from what you just said, seems to amplify that.
Yes. Yeah. I can't reinforce that anymore. It's just, once you're in OSI, you're always in OSI. And even with all the retired OSI agents, like when you talk with them, it's like you pick up right where they left off. And a lot of these historical things that these folks have been involved in over the years is just really awesome and amazing to hear that story. And I'm really surprised that this is my 30th year, and OSI isn't that old, so I've been around like a third of the time. Right. So now I'm turning into one of the old guys pretty soon, and hopefully we'll be able to share a couple of my stories to the younger folks.
Well, there's nothing wrong with being a veteran. That's for sure. Let's kind of look back a little bit now. I know hindsight's always 20/20, okay? But if you could do it all over again, is there anything you would change about your OSI career?
Wow. I don't even like thinking about that, because of course there are things, that have occurred, especially, things that happen in like combat zones and things that if I could go back and change things, I absolutely would change things, but you can't do that. Sure, so what I've done is I take those experiences and those things that happen, and I tried to turn them into learning experiences for myself and everybody around me, because I did not want those events to be wasted.
I see. Okay, very good. So you take advantage of any and all situations. Then it sounds like.
Yeah, I mean, if you don't, then you've just wasted an opportunity to learn, or to keep something from happening again, or to make something better, or to create a better environment for someone to work in.
Sure. Now, what direction do you envision OSI going into the future? Since you, like I said, this is your 30th year, and you've seen a lot of things change in OSI, and flexibility and all the other good things. What do you look ahead a little bit as far as projecting ahead? Where do you see OSI going?
Well, obviously, maybe this is an old guy thing, but our workforce is so much smarter. Like if you could pick up our workforce now and drop them back to when I started, they're 1,000 miles ahead of us in, technology and education and process and everything else. Right. So I see OSI becoming maybe a little bit leaner because we're faster and better, right? A little bit more, focused because we have the tools to be more focused, and a little bit more, directive in some of the things that we do. And I think that the other agencies, the other military investigative agencies, are seeing about how well we have postured ourselves.
Sure.
Because one thing that OSI has done great is it has embraced technology and not held it off. I remember the day that we got our first desktop computers in OSI. Right. And some of the old guys were like, those things are just going to slow us down. And all of us, we were like, no, this is going to speed us up. So now I'm really careful when new technology comes on board. I make sure I say this is great, even if I don't understand it.
Right.
What I do is I grab a hold of one of the young people and I'm like, hey, can you tell me exactly what this does, how it works, and how it makes us better? And you know what? They can do it.
Oh, yeah. Well, adaptation, being able to adapt to technology, your surroundings, and the various evolution of things these days, I guess is part and parcel with what is making OSI, one of the premier organizations around.
Right. And, and it's a wonderful place. Again, the technology has changed, right? And our processes have changed, but the quality of people that we are recruiting and bringing in this command, and it doesn't matter where you come from or who you are, the quality of people is fantastic. Right. So the thing that hasn't changed is the quality of our team and the power that we bring to the Air Force in general to help us continue, to fly, fight, and win, and to do all of those things.
Right. Very well said. Now, obviously, these days, diversity and inclusion has been a very prominent topic these days. Why, in your opinion, sir, is diversity and inclusion foundational to the success of an organization like OSI?
Well, just like I said before, what really makes us strong is the diversity of our corporate knowledge. Right. And all the different experiences and where people are from and their backgrounds and who they are as a person. And that is what makes us powerful and really a leader in the field in all these different areas, because we make sure that our workforce is built up of all types of people and all types of experiences, right, and that all of those things are valued, right? And we expect people to share things that will make the team better. So that's really what makes us strong.
Yeah, sharing that knowledge is the key piece, I think, and that's how we all learn, as you mentioned, and that's how we grow as an organization. Again, very good advice. Now, as far as let's put on a recruiting hat for you, sir, briefly. What advice would you give someone who would like to join OSI? This is from a gentleman who's seen just about everything in OSI and who is now celebrating your 30th year with the organization.
Well, a couple things. Be curious, right? Because we want to recruit people who are curious people. So if someone, when I was working in the field, would show up and I would ask them, they'd be like, "Hey, I want to come into OSI," and I'm like, "Great. What year did we become a separate investigative agency? And what was the name of our first commander?"
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And if they were like, and I'd be like, "Listen," so I'd pull the John Purcell on them. "I need you to go back and I need you to do a little bit of research and find out about who we are and why you think that you want to be part of the organization."
Right.
So, but if somebody came to my office and like, "Hey, this is when you started, this is the first commander, General Carroll, and these are all these things, and here's your mission set," then I'd be like, "Okay, why do you want to be part of the team?" So I would just tell people, hey, if you are curious, don't come in an OSI office and be like, "I hate my job, I want to change," because that doesn't make us want to bring you in either.
Right.
But it is perfectly fine to say like, "Hey, I did this other job. It isn't the best fit for me, and I think OSI might be. And I've served my time in the other job, and I have an opportunity to do something else, and I would like to know more about this organization to see if this is it."
Yeah, and how they can share their specific skill sets to the betterment of OSI.
Right.
Very, very good. But before we wrap things up, sir, is there anything else that you'd like to add?
I just want to say that thanks for this opportunity. I wasn't expecting it, just like I wasn't expecting to find anything out about my background and my history, and where I came from. And it's a complete surprise to me. But what I can tell you is that OSI is a great organization. We work hard to continue to be a great organization. If you want an opportunity to lead early in your career, OSI is a place to do that. If you want an opportunity to have an impact on the big Air Force and the little Air Force, OSI is a place to do that. And if you want a place where you can develop as a professional and a person, OSI is a great place to do that. So that's what it's done for me. And I just want to make sure that everybody understands that I just was kind of along for the ride. I jumped on the OSI boat and it's taken me all these places, and there's lots of seats left on that boat for many, many more people. So thank you for giving me the opportunity just to kind of throw that out.
No problem, and it's been great to have you. Now, our guest has been Office of Special Investigations Deputy Director of Behavioral Sciences, Mr. Terry Krebs. Sir, thanks again so much for taking the time to be with us. We really enjoyed speaking with you today.
All right. Thank you very much.
And thanks to all of you listening for tuning in. For OSI Today, my OSI Journey, I'm Wayne Amon saying so long for now.